All right, Assalamu alaikum. Today we're going to continue the next two categories of mitzvot, right? And at the end, we're going to read a chapter in Sefer Melachim, the Book of Kings, to see a story that demonstrates both these categories of mitzvot. So המצוות, שהקבוצה החמישית כוללת, right, the fifth category of mitzvot, הן אלה שמנינו בספר נזיקין. These are the mitzvot that the Rambam listed in the book of Nezikim, one of his 14 volumes in the Mishneh Torah. וכולן עוסקות בסילוק מעשה עושק ובמניעת נזקים. And all of these mitzvot are related to removing injustices between people, taking advantage of other people, and preventing damages that one person either does to another person or one person's property does to another person or their property. All right? For instance, Shorosh and Agach, right? You own an ox, and the ox goes and rams someone else, causes damage, whether it's damage to the person's body or damage to the person's property, right? All the laws regarding these things are in Sefer Nezikin. כדי לחזק את הזהירות, למנוע נזקים, חויב האדם על כל נזק הבא מרכושו, right? In order to make the person more careful to not cause any damages to anybody, he is instructed, or he is liable for any damages that are caused by his property, or shenigram mima'aseh shelo, or that is caused by his actions. Shu yachol lishmor ulhashgiach alav shelo yazik. But this is only if it's actually possible for the person to prevent his property from causing this damage.
Sorry, which side are you
I don't have a page. Left side. See? My left, yeah.
on? Your left, okay, not the side.
Oh. Yeah, pass me a page. No, that's not the right page.
No?
No, it's a new page. This page is near the Tanakh.
Mitzvot here, right?
Hamishi. Yeah, number one, where it's here. This left side. The one that says Hamishi in bold.
Nun Gimel Mem.
Men, yeah, exactly. It always prints it backwards. לכן חויבנו על הנזקים הבאים מבהמותינו. That's why we were held liable for any damages caused by our animals. כדי שנשמור עליהן, so that we guard them, meaning we build fences so that they don't escape and cause damages to other people. וכן esh ubor. We said there's 4 avot nezikin, right? If you open up, right, Seder nezikin in the Mishnah, right? There's 4 fathers of all damages, Hashor, Habor, right? There's your animal, your livestock, your ox. The bor is if you make some sort of you dig a hole in the ground. By the way, a bor could also be you cause some sort of obstacle in the way. You set a fire, you cause damages by burning things down, right? And also associated with the animal is him eating other people's property. Right? Right? These are things that are in man's actions, right? To make an obstacle or to set a fire. And a person is liable because it is his responsibility when he does these actions to make sure he doesn't cause damage to anyone else. יש בדינים האלה צדק כמו שהעיר, שן ורגל ברשות הרבים, right? And it's very precise and just. For instance, shen veregel. Shen is the tooth, meaning your animal bit or ate something, and a regel, he trampled something. If it's done in a reshut harabim, in the public domain, patur, right? Then the person is not liable for damages, right? If someone's animal ate something that was lying in a reshut harabim, why? Because this isn't something that you could prevent your animal from doing. It's his instinct to eat food that comes next to him. However, the person who just neglected his stuff in the public domain, he should have protected his property from the potential of being eaten by other animals that are walking freely in the public domain. מה גם שהנזק הנגרם מהם שם הוא קטן, and it's also small damages, right? He ate someone's apple, right? He should have watched your apple. ומי ששם דבר מה ברשות הרבים הוא שפשע, and someone who left something in the public domain, he's the one who is actually liable. הוא שפשע נגד עצמו והפקיר את ממונו לאובדן, right? If you just leave money out in the street, don't be surprised that it's going to disappear. Right? That's your responsibility to not leave your property lying around. However, if your animal wandered into someone else's property and started eating his fruit and vegetable or his piles of hay or whatever it is, right? You're completely liable because you have to make sure that your animal doesn't wander off your property. אשר לנזק הקרן והדומה לה שניתן לשמור אותם מלהזיק בכל מקום. So too with goring. This is something that you can prevent your animal from just going around and goring בכל מקום. והעוברים ברשות הרבים אינם יכולים להישמר מנזק. And people walking around in the public domain, they can't protect themselves from your animal goring them, so you have to pay. You're liable for any of those damages. However, they do separate between if your animal is accustomed to goring and causing damages, because most animals, especially domesticated animals like sheep and the ox, they don't usually go around and goring. So if your animal has never gored before, and this is the first time that it happens, then you only pay half the liability. You're only liable for half the damages, right? However, if it's repeated over and over 3 times, right, then that's it. He's called a shor mu'ad. And if it's a shor mu'ad, mu'ad means that they already testified that this shor causes, he has a tendency to gore other people or gore certain things, right? Then you have to be extra protective of your shor to make sure he doesn't cause damages. And if he causes damages, then you're liable for the full amount of the damages. All right, אם מעשה זה חריג, all right, הוא מחויב בחצי נזק, ואם עושה הזק כבר הורגל ונודע בכך, הוא מחויב בנזק שלם. All right. קבוצה זו כוללת גם את הריגת הרודף. By the way, this is the main part of damages laws, right? ארבע אבות נזיקין. We see this in פרשת משפטים, all the mitzvot, not all the mitzvot, the first mitzvot that come in פרשת משפטים are with the Arba Avot Nezikin, and then it goes on to Arba Shomerim, the 4 categories of we'll call it watchers or keepers, right? If you leave your property with someone, is he watching over your stuff for free, or are you paying him to watch over your stuff? And what are the liabilities over there? Anyways, we're not getting into all the halachot here. We just want an overview of the mitzvot, right? In Sefer HaMitzvot. קבוצה זו כוללת גם את הריגת הרודף, right? This category of mitzvot also includes the laws of killing a rodef. What is a rodef? Anyone ever hear of a rodef? If you see someone chasing after someone else with a knife to kill him, right? He is called a rodef, a persecutor. All right? What's the deen of someone who is a rodef? Is you kill him before he kills someone, right? Someone's about to commit murder. Your only way to stop him is by shooting him in the head. You shoot him in the head. That's din rodef. All right? דין זה, כלומר הריגתו של מי שרוצה לחטוא לפני שביצע את החטא, right? The killing of somebody who is about to commit a crime before he commits the crime, אסור בשום אופן מלבד בשני מינים אלה, right? It is forbidden to kill someone who is about to commit a crime, right? To prevent him from committing a crime, except for in two cases. rodef ahar havero lehorgo, right? If he's trying to commit murder, then you can kill him before. Verodef ahar ervat adam legalota, or sexual harassment, right? These are the two cases where if someone is about to commit a crime and the only way you can stop them is by killing them, then you kill them, right? If, on the other hand, they're going to steal someone's property, you can't kill them to prevent them from stealing. You can do other things to try to prevent them, but if it comes to the point where it's either he steals or you kill him, then you let him steal and then you sue him after in court, right? Why? Mishum שזה עוון שאי אפשר לתקנו אם יתבצע, because there is no undoing the damage of the crime that this person is about to do if he already did it, right? If a person killed someone, you can't bring him back to life. If a person raped someone, you can't undo the rape, right? So in these two cases alone, if you see someone about to commit the crime and your only way to prevent it is by killing him, you have to kill him. But any of the other transgressions of the 613 other mitzvot, or 611 other mitzvot, right? Sheyesh alehin mitat bedin, even if the transgression is punishable by death in the court, kmo avodah zarah, the Shabbat, like doing a pagan ritual or desecrating the Shabbat, right? En bahen avil lezulat. There is no damages to the public, and so you're not allowed to prevent it through killing. Ela deot. These are midot that a person has, characteristic traits. Lachen en horgim al haratzon la'asotan ela rak ksheye'aseh. And so you don't kill them for their pursuit of doing the avirah, but they can be punished by death after they transgressed and taken to court and put on trial, and the court decides that they indeed commit this crime that is punishable by death and sentences them to death. Isurei titaveh v'hamidah v'shavat avedad. Okay, so what else does this also include? Other transgressions of ta'avah and hamidah and hashevat avedah. Hashevat avedah is returning someone's lost property. Max found someone's wallet earlier, right? What does he do? By the way, you recorded now, so watch how you answer the question. Hashevat Aveda, right? That's also part of this category of mitzvot. And Hata'ava v'hamida. What is Hata'ava v'hamida? We have one of the 10 commandments is lo tachmod. Lo tachmod, not to covet someone else's property, right? And we're going to see these mitzvot. It's interesting mitzvot because this is a mitzvah on, we were talking before about sechel, regesh, dimayon, and maaseh, right? Rav Yossi was talking about all of the avirot, almost all of the avirot is in your ma'aseh, right? Actions. Lo tachmod applies to your dimayon or your regesh. All right, and we're gonna see. We're also gonna go back to the rodef again. All right, so these are the main mitzvot. Yadua she'isur ta'avahu biglal hamida. Right, the isur to covet something is because you might do actually something in order to gain someone else's property, like steal. The hamida biglal hagezen, and the homed is that you covet someone else's property can lead you to gezel, to robbery. Chachamenu zal bi'aruzot b'mechilta. And the Chachamim already spoke about this in the Mechilta, and soon we'll take a quick look at the halachot here. But let's just go through the list of mitzvot in Sefer Nezikin, right? So Ilchot Nizke Mamon, right? We saw Din Ashor, Din Ha'ever, Din Habor, Din Hava'ara. Those are the four Avot Nezikin. And then we have Ilchot Geneva, all the mitzvot that are related to theft, right? Yesh Bichlalan Sheva mitzvot, there's 7 mitzvot there, 2 Aseh and 5 Lo Ta'aseh. And then we have Ilchot Gizela ve'aveda. Gizela is there's theft and there's robbery. All right, theft is you steal something without someone knowing. Gezel is actually physically robbing someone, meaning going maybe I guess what they call like armed robbery or something, right? Where you actually go take something by force, right? Gezela ve'aveda yishud bichlalan sheva mitzvot. There's 7 mitzvot here, 2 aseh, 5 lo ta'aseh. Then we have hilchot choven u'mazik. It's 1 mitzvah, and that is what is the law regarding someone who choven u'mazik is someone who I guess that would be like aggravated assault, when you assault someone, you punch someone, and you cause them damage, right? And then we have hilchot urotzeach u'shmirat hanefesh, the laws regarding murder or preventing death of other people, right? Yesh bichlalan sheva esre mitzvot. There are 17 mitzvot here under Hilchot Rotzeach, 7 positive mitzvot, mitzvot aseh, and 10 lo ta'aseh. All right, we're not going to go through all of them. Nimtzu kol ha-mitzvot. We're on the next page. Kol ha-mitzvot ha-nichlalot b'sefer zeh shelushim vashesh. Right, under Sefer Nezikin, this 5th category of mitzvot, we have a total of 36 mitzvot. Shesh esre mehen mitzvot aseh, 16 aseh, and 20 lo ta'aseh. All right, and now any questions on this category so far? We're going to take a look at 2 specific mitzvot here under this 5th category. Mitzvat lo ta'aseh resh samech he. That's 265 and 266. Those are the 2 mitzvot we're going to look at. הזהירנו מעשים מחשבותינו לעשות תחבולה כדי לקנות מה שברשות זולתנו מאחינו. Right? We have a mitzvah saying that we are not allowed to plan how we are going to acquire someone else's property that we want. Right? Don't covet your friends or your neighbor's house. Velashon mechilta lo tachmod. Right? The mechilta says, what is lo tachmod? Yachol afilu chomed bedibur. It could be that maybe he just says that he wants it. Tilmod lomar lo tachmod kesef v'zahav. Right? Don't covet. There's another pasuk that says, don't covet gold and silver. Ma lehalan ad sheyaseh ma'aseh. Afkan ad sheyaseh ma'aseh. Right? So, same way in where it says, lo tachmod kesef v'zahav, don't covet someone else's money and silver and gold. And in that case, you only transgress that isur when you actually do something. So to here, it's only once you actually do something or make a plan to acquire someone else's property, right? הנה יתבאה לך כי זה עליו מזהיר מהערים עד שניקח לעצמנו דבר שאנחנו חומדין אותו ממון אחינו. אפילו לקנותו ולתת לו דמים. Says you even transgress this avera, right? That's you approach someone, you say, okay, I really like your house. How much is it worth? It's $1,000,000 shekel. It's $1,000,000. I want to buy your house for $1,000,000. He says, I'm sorry, my house isn't for sale. This is my house. I say, okay, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to go to the city council. I'm going to see what can I do to make him sell his house. And you try to file some sort of false claim, and you say, you know what? I'll even pay you $2,000,000 for your house. He says, I don't want to sell my house, right? Even if you overpaid, right, to buy his house at double the price, right? That's lo tachmod. That's an isur. Then you transgress lo tachmod. Anyone who does this transgresses lo tachmod. Yes.
I think I know a way on First Kings.
Why?
The verse that we're gonna see. I think I know.
What?
It's gonna be the Jezebel wanted.
Yes. Yes. And we're going to see it comes back also in the next category of mitzvot. Resh Tamich Vav, 266. Very sharp, very nice. הזהירנו מעשים מחשבותינו לחמוד מה שיש לאחינו ולהתהוות בו ולהתאבות בו שזה יהיה מבוא לעשות תחבולה לקנותו. Says the next mitzvah is forbidding us to even want to have the ta'avah. Right, so tachmod is to make a plan, to devise some sort of plan in order to acquire your friend's property. Here it says to even think about wanting your neighbor's property if he doesn't want to sell it. וזהו לשון האזהרה בזה העניין אומרו לא תתאווה בית רעך. And this is what the pasuk says, don't even want, right, your friend's property. And these aren't the same transgression, right? 265 and 266 are two separate transgressions. אבל עליו הראשון, the first one that we saw before, ולא תחמוד, הזהיר מלקנות מה שיש לזולתנו. That's an isur to actually acquire someone else's property that he owns, that he wants. Velav sheni, and the second one, mazir afilu lit'avot belibenu levad. This one is to even want it in our minds or in our hearts, in our imagination, right? We need to, like Rav Yossi said, to control our imaginations, even to control our wants regarding somebody else's property. Velashon Mechilta, back to the Mechilta, was written by Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, right? Is Midrash Halacha, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, the Mechilta, Ne'emar kan, Lo Tachmod, it says here Lo Tachmod, Velahalanu Omer, it says over here it says Lo Tachmod, and over there it says Velo titaveh, right? Don't even want, right? Lechayev ala ta'ava bifnei atzma, ועל החימוד בפני עצמו. Why this say לא תחמוד and לא תתאווה is this way. There's two separate transgressions. One is for actually doing something to acquire someone else's property, and the other is just to make you transgress and liable just for wanting someone else's property. ושם אמרו, and over there they said, how do we know that if someone just wants someone else's property, right, that he's going to ultimately also transgress lo tachmod? Shneimar velo titaveh velo tachmod minayin shim chamad shesofo le'enos. All right, it says so. We're going to skip a bit. It says lo tachmod. Sorry, lo titaveh, the ta'ava leads to lo tachmod. Lo tachmod says ultimately leads to gezer, robbery. Says you want it so much, right? You can't find any other means to acquire it. that can lead you to eventually take it, rob him from his property, assault him, or find some sort of way to force him out of his property and get it for yourself. Right? The movies are full of these. Just watch Better Call Saul. That's probably one of the best shows demonstrating this chain from lo titaveh to lo tachmod, and ultimately to gezer. Right. So these three transgressions actually they come together. התבונן, I'm skipping to the last line here in לא תעשה, התבונן בעניין זה במעשה אחאב ונבות. He says, you want to understand, you want like a live example, just look at what happened with Ahab and Naboth. Anyone know the story of Ahab and Naboth? It's called Kerem Naboth HaIsraeli. Ahab was a king of Israel, not of Judah, of Israel, times of Eliyahu Navi, right? Right under his palace, there was the fields of Naboth, someone named Naboth, and Ahab wanted his field because he wanted to expand his palace, and Naboth's field is in the way. And he said, I want your field. He said, no, I don't want to. He said, Halil Alima Hashem, right? God forbid I should give away my ancestors' property, right? And he tried to say, I'll give you a lot of money for it. I'll give you an even better field somewhere else for it. I want your field, right? What happened in the end? We'll find out later.
Yeah.
It didn't end well for Naboth. Sorry?
The answer is in the Kings.
Yeah, we'll get to that. Because it's also related to the next category that we're going to learn. All right, כל המתאווה, הלכות גזלה ואבדה, the laws of stealing and lost property. כל החומר עבדו או אמתו או ביתו וכליו של חברו, עוד דבר שאפשר לו שיקנהו ממנו. Anyone who covets someone else's property or wife or whatever, right? והכביר עליו ברעים והפסיר בו, and he came to him, again, he's sending other people to tell him, by the way, he really wants your stuff, and he keeps coming back asking for more, right? He's already harassing him. עד שלקחו ממנו אף על פי שנתן לו דמים רבים. Says, until he eventually acquired his property from him, even though he paid him an overpriced value, right? הרי זה עובר בלא תעשה, right? This is transgressing a לא תעשה, שנאמר לא תחמוד. This is, again, one of the 10 commandments. Then לוקחין עליו זה, however, you don't get lashes for doing this, how do you call it, for doing this avera. Why? מפני שאין בו מעשה. There isn't any actual action involved. You paid someone for their property, right? You didn't actually rob him. If you robbed him, then you'll get malkot, right? ואינו עובר בלב זה עד שייקח החפץ שחמד. And he doesn't transgress this, and he doesn't make this transgression until he actually acquires that property. כעניין שנאמר, לא תחמוד כסף וזהב עליהם, right? Don't covet silver or gold, ולקחת לך, and you took it, acquired it for yourself. חימוד שיש בו מעשה. The action needs to be an action. כל המתאווה ביתו או אשתו וכליו של חברו. Right? Anybody who desires somebody else's property or wife or house, וכן כל כיוסף בהן משאר הדברים, or anything else that he can acquire from him, כיוון שחשב בליבו האח יקנה דבר זה, as soon as he tried to devise a plan of how he's going to acquire this property, ונפתה בליבו בדבר, עבר בלא תעשה. Right? From that instance, he transgresses the avera of לא תתאווה. עבר התאווה אלא בלב בלבד. right? And the ta'avah itself is something that's in your heart, it's in your imagination. Ta'avah miviyah lidei himud, right? The ta'avah itself, the lust or the want, right, brings you to himud. Himud is to devise the plan. Himud mevi lidei gezel, and himud brings you to actual robbery. Sheim lo ratzu haba'alim limkor, right? Because if the owners didn't want to sell, afal pishir balahim bedamim, even though he's offering them a lot of money for it, v'hifsir bereim, and he's sending more people to try to convince him to sell, yavo lidegez, and that can lead him to actual robbery. Shne'emar, as it says, v'hamdu batim v'gazalu, right? And they coveted houses and they stole them. ואם עמדו הבעלים בפניו להציל ממונם, או מנעוהו מלגזול, יבוא לידי שפיכות דמים. And he says even more that if he comes to rob the person and the owner tries to stop him, that could even lead him to murder, to actually killing the person. Yes.
There is, I don't know if in the Spanish law has this, but I know the Portuguese law has, and there's some modifications along with Brazilian. I don't know the translation into English.
Say it in Hebrew.
I don't know if it's just Portuguese. It's called uso capião. It means like if I go and like if I like your property or if I occupy your property for quite of I don't know 5 years, 20 years, something happens, I can take ownership of that.
Okay.
Of that property.
Squatters' rights. Yeah. That's an abandoned property, though.
Well, but sometimes it's not.
I mean, sometimes they force the person to abandon the property, squat in it. Yes.
That's exactly it's done. Now,
Yeah.
why is it? Squatters?
Squatters in English. Yeah.
Okay.
It's only 10 years.
Yeah.
10 years?
10 years.
I know America's having a big problem with that now. Some neighborhoods.
There's also a thing with boats in America. If you find a boat, like in the ocean or not docked or something, and no one's on it,
Or in the
after,
Strait of Hormuz, yeah.
yeah, so you can, it's yours, like after a certain amount of time, I don't know.
Oh, yeah? Okay. Here, no, I mean, there is also in Hebrew law, chazakah. It's called a chazakah. Because, if it's an abandoned property, right, then it has no owner to it. Someone acquires it or holds it for a certain amount of time, he has a hazakah over it, right? But you can't force someone to abandon their property for it, right? Or just move in and become a squatter.
Yeah.
Someone goes on vacation and you move into his house.
That or people even with the guns, like they push people out.
Yeah.
The factions, whatever.
They force them to abandon their properties.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Anachem.
Yes, when here it says damim is from blood, right? From blood.
Yeah, shfichut damim.
Spilling blood.
Yeah, shfichut damim is spilling blood, but you're right. Afilu shirbalu damim harbe, right? Damim also means money, right? One of the main motives for murder is money, right? All right, that is the fifth category. Let's take a quick look at the sixth category. The sixth category, even though there's a lot of text here, there isn't really too much to go into. The sixth category, כן, המצווה, הקבוצה השישית כוללת את העונשים. The sixth category of mitzvot includes all of the punishments that the court is mandated to punish the transgressor of an avera. Right? תועלתן באופן כללי ידועה, right? Their benefit is generally known. Right? וכבר ציינו אותם, we already mentioned, שמע כעת את פירוט הדברים ודינו של כל דבר יוצא באופן שנאמר בהם, right? So let's see, in general, באופן כללי נקבע עונשו של כל מי שתוקף את זולתו, שיעשה בו מה שעשה בשווה. Says the general rule regarding the punishments in Hebrew law is whatever damages you cause to someone else will be caused to you by punishment. That's the general rule. Im paga beguf, ipaga begufo. Generally speaking, right, if you cause physical harm to someone, then you should also be physically harmed. However, right, you can compensate monetarily, right? But it's compensating the physical damage that you did. Vim paga b'mamon, and if you damage someone's property, then your property will be damaged. This is different, by the way, than nizakim. Than what we saw before is where you're liable to pay damages. That was out of negligence. This is if you actually did something, right? A punishment is for actually doing something wrong, like stealing or beating or something like that, right? שיעשה בו מעשה בשווה, alright, ואם פגע בממון, ובעל הממון רשאי לוותר ולסלוח, right? The person that you transgressed or caused damage to, he can forgive you, and you won't need to pay those damages, right? Except רק לרוצח בשל חומרת פשעו, right? Because of the severity of murder, only in the case of murder, even if the person that you caused to die says, forget about it, I forgave him for it, right? Like he's about to die, you caused him, you poisoned him, he's about to die. Before he dies, he says, I forgive him for it. He's still not exempt from capital punishment, right? אין לוותר בשום אופן, ואין לקחת ממנו כופר נפש, right? There is no exemption from murder. If you murdered someone, it's punishable by death, and there's no ransom that can be paid for you to not get executed by the court. There is no leeway here. Only in the case of murder. ולארץ לא יכופר על אדם אשר שופח בה, כי אם בדם שופכו. Says the land, right, does not get atoned from the blood that was spilled on it, except for spilling the blood of the murderer. לכן אפילו נותר הנרצח בחיים במשך שעה או כמה ימים, even the person who was murdered, he didn't die right away. He takes some time to die, and he's completely sane, and he says, leave my murderer alone. I forgave him for it, right? And shomin lo, we don't listen to him. And a nefesh benefesh, right? You pay a life for a life. Bichrach, in any event, katan kegadol, eved keben horim, hacham kesachal, right? Doesn't matter if it was a slave that was murdered, or if it was a free person that was murdered, it was a child, or it was an adult. A murder is a murder. Any murder, it can't go unpunished. משום שאין בכל פשעי האדם דבר חמור מזה. Because there is nothing more severe in human actions than murder. All right? We'll skip a bit. It says, okay, that's generally speaking. Generally speaking, all punishments are midah keneged midah. Whatever you cause, right, will be caused back to you. It says, however, right, there's something you need to understand, right? Still, the severity of the punishment can be more or less than severity of the action that you did based on certain things. One is the severity of the transgression, right? Or the frequency of this kind of transgression. Like we'll see, something that is easy to steal, right? Then the punishment on it will be much more severe in order to be a bigger deterrence from you from stealing. For instance, he brings here, if you stole someone's lamb, right? Then you need to pay back 4 times the amount. Why? Because it's relatively, it's not that difficult to steal someone's lamb. However, if you steal someone's cow, you have to pay 5 times the amount. Why? Because lamb, when they herd, they're all in a group. And so the person who takes them out, right, the shepherd who takes them out, he can see the whole group and he can see if someone's stealing from them. However, if you see cowboys, right, their cows, the beef, the cattle, they're spread out on huge areas. So it's much easier to steal someone's cow than it is to steal his lamb. So you have to pay 5 times the amount back. All right. So and there's so that's what makes the difference between different levels of severity of punishment is how much we need to deter someone from doing this transgression, which could be how easy it is to do it, how common it could be to do it, um, how easy it is to find out who's the culprit, right? For instance, gezel, you robbed someone. If you know who the gazlan is. If you stole something without it, at night, and there wasn't a physical confrontation, then you don't know who the thief is, right? So once the thief is discovered, he's going to have to pay back more. His knas, his fine is going to be much greater. Why? Because also the gazlan, you need to have a certain amount of chutzpah to do it, so it's not as common. Now there's 4 levels of punishment. There's mitat bedin, that's the highest. There's malkot, or with karet, meaning you get lashes. Um, there's malkot that doesn't also have karet associated with it. Karet is you're cut off from olam haba, right? But the actual physical punishment is malkot. There's malkot that doesn't have that. It's not as severe, right? And there is dargata isur she'en bo malkot, and there's also the level of isur that doesn't have malkot. You did something, you don't get lashes for it, but it's an isur, right? There is no actual punishment there. לא תמצא מיתת בית בשום דבר פרט לאותם הדברים החמורים. And you won't, he gives a list of all sorts of transgressions, and only these, there's actually capital punishment. ולא כל העריות במיתת בית דין, and not every forbidden relationship has a mitat bedin associated with it. Only those that are very easy to do, or those that are especially disgusting to do, right? או שיש עליהן פיתוי רב יותר, or that there's an extra, it's you're even more inclined to do it. מה שאינו כן בכרת בלבד. All right, so which mitzvot are related to this 6th category of mitzvot? is הלכות סנהדרין והנושים המסורים להם. There's here, יש בכללן 30 mitzvot, another 30 mitzvot, 10 mitzvot aseh, and 20 mitzvot lo ta'aseh. Okay? And let's look at הלכות רוצח. ההורג נפשות, ולא היו עדים רואים אותו כאחת, אלא ראו אחד אחרי האחד, או שהרג בפני 2 עדים בלא התראה, או שהוכחשו העדים בבדיקות ולא הוכחשו בחקירות. Someone who murders, right? He murdered many people, and you can't find 2 witnesses to testify against his murders. Or let's say one witness only saw him running with a knife, and the other one only saw him actually do the murder. Or for whatever reason, you can't build a full case against him, right? כל אלו הרצחנים קולצין אותם לכיפה ומכנים אותם לחם צר ומים לחץ עד שיצרו מעהן, right? All of these murders, their punishment is you don't actually execute them, but you put them in, basically you put them in like a torture chamber, and you feed them in a way that eventually it will cause them to die. ואין עושים דבר זה לשאר מחויבי מיתת בית דין. And we don't do anything like this for any other transgression that has a capital punishment associated with it, except for murder. If someone, right, he stands trial and they sentence him to death, then they kill him. And if they can't build the case against him, right, and execute him, then he's patur, then he's released. He goes free. שאף על פי שיש עוונות חמורים משפיכות דמים, because even though there are transgressions that are worse or more liable than murder, אין בהן השחתת יישובות של עולם כשפיכות דמים. Right? There is no transgression that is as disruptive to society as murder. Afilu avodah zarah, right? Even someone who does avodah zarah, which is the worst avirah, right? You can do. The whole Torah was given in order to in order to be an antidote to avodah zarah, to elevate us from avodah zarah. Afilu avodah zarah, ve'en tzarich lomar arayot, right? And I don't need to say forbidden relations or hilul Shabbat or transgressing Shabbat. None of these, even though they could be more severe than murder, they're not as disruptive to society as murder is, right? So there is no exemption from punishment when it comes to murder. שאלו עוונות הן מעבירות שבין אדם למקום, right? Because all of these other עבירות, transgressions, are between you and God. אבל שפיכות דמים מעבירות שבינו לבין חברו. However, murder is a transgression against the other members of your society. וכל מי שיש בו עוון זה הרי הוא רשע גמור, and everyone who has this transgression is an absolute רשע. ואין כל המצוות שעשה כל ימיו שקונים כנגד עוון זה. And it doesn't matter how many mitzvot you have, all the mitzvot that you have can't protect you from the punishment of murdering someone else. ולא יצילהו מן הדין, and they won't protect him from his judgment. צא ולמד מאחיו. Go and see from the case of Ahab, עובד עבודה זרה, שהרי נאמר בו, רק לא היה כאחיו. Right? Ahab was the worst king we ever had, according to Sefer Melachim. He made everyone do avodah zarah. Right? He completely destroyed God's vision for how Israel needs to look. וכשנסדרו עוונותיו וזכויותיו לפני אלוהי הרוחות, however, when God wanted to punish him, finally punish him, לא נמצא עוון שחייבו כליה. He didn't find a transgression that he can say, this I should kill him for. אלא דמי נבות, except for the spilling of Naboth's blood. So what happened? We don't really have time to go through Sefer Melachim. What happened there with Kerem Naboth? Right? Ahab wanted Naboth's field. It was right next to his palace. Naboth didn't want to sell his field. So what did he do? He went to Izebel, his queen, right? And Izebel said, so what's the big deal? Let's just have, we'll charge him with some sort of false transgression against the king. We'll have him executed. And then, as the king, you can confiscate his land for rebelling against the king. All right? And so they had this whole trial against Naboth for something that he never did. And Naboth was executed by the king, and his property was confiscated. And then he's going to go out to war. He's partnering now, actually. Ahab is partnering with Yehoshaphat, the king of Judah, and they're going to fight a war against Aram. Right? Sorry. They're going to fight a war against Aram, and God says, I want Ahab to die in this war, right? And the prophet, I'll just read out that part. This is actually in Coveting. Yeah. ויאמר לכן שמע דבר אדוני. We're in מלכים א' כ"ב פסוק י"ט. Anyone who has it, right? ראיתי את אדוני יושב על כיסאו. The prophet says, I had a vision of God sitting on his throne. וכל צבא השמיים עומד עליו מימינו ומשמאלו. And all the hosts of the heavens are surrounding him, right? Standing to his left and to his right. ויאמר אדוני מי יפתה את אחאב ויעל ויפול ברמות גלעד? Who is going to entice Ahab to go up and to die in Ramot Gilad where the battle is going to take place? Right? Who are these hosts of the skies? We see this in Iyov as well. Right? You have the Satan, and then you have all the angels. Right? The angels, whether the good angels or the bad angels, these are a person's mitzvot and avonot. And God is saying, who's going to speak up, right, to get Naboth to die in Ramot Gilad? Vayomer ze becho, veze omer becho. These are speaking, and these are speaking, meaning he has some zechuyot. He actually kept the people pretty well united, right? He has a lot of victories as well in the battlefield. He did some good things, he did some bad things, and they're all competing, right? He did avodah zarah, no, but he won this victory, and blah blah blah. Vayetzeh haruach, and then the wind came. Vayamod lifnei Adonai, and he came and stood before God. Vayomer ani afatenu, says, I am going to seduce him. Vayomer Adonai elav bama, and God says to him in what? Vayomer, it says, v'haiti ruach sheker, I'm going to go and be a false spirit befikul neviav, in the mouths of all of his prophets. Vayomer tefateh vegam tuchal, he says, go and entice him and you will succeed. Tzeh va'asechem, says, go out and do as you said. And one of the big problems that Ahab had was that he had an army of prophets that told him whatever he wanted to hear. Right? All the Nevi'ei Sheker, the only Nevi'im who stood up to him was Eliyahu Navi. All right? And so what is it? It's a little bit of a bizarre prophecy. לא רק כאחאב, כשנסדרו עוונותיו וזכויותיו, he didn't find anything that goes except for the spilling of Naboth's blood. ותצא הרוח, and he brings this, ותצא הרוח ותעמוד לפני אדוני. Says in this, and the wind or the spirit came and stood up before God. What do the Hachamim? Zeruach Naboth. This is the spirit of Naboth whose blood he shed. It says you will succeed in getting Ahab killed on the battlefield. Says, and he was liable for this death, even though he didn't murder himself, he just caused him to be murdered. Remember, what is lo tachmod? Lo tachmod doesn't mean you have to go and actually do something. But even if you start planning something or you cause someone else's property that you covet to come to you, right? It can lead to gezel and it could lead to shfichut damim, like what happened with Ahab. And even though he didn't actually kill him, but his isur was really lo tahmod, right? That was enough to get Naboth killed, his property confiscated, and Ahab to be liable to be finally punished on the battlefield and died. So, what is this ruach? It's this ruach sheker. he caused a falsehood. He had a false trial, a fictitious trial against Naboth that caused his death. And as a punishment, he had an army of false prophets giving him bad advice, which eventually got him killed on the battlefield. It says, and there is no worse. It says, Avodah Zarah wasn't enough to get him killed, to get the king killed. All his other transgressions wasn't enough to get him killed. This one case of murder is what brought to the end of Ahab, right? Any other transgression is between the king and God, is between us and God, right? But these transgressions that disrupt society, right? And we also saw before, there's only two cases where a rodef is actually, that you can actually kill a rodef, is if he's going to murder or if he's going to rape, right? Because these are disruptive to society and the damage can't be undone. And these are the fifth and the sixth categories of the mitzvot. Any questions?
Rob, everything like for killing to Naboth was prepared for his wife, right?
For Ahab's wife.
As well,
Yeah. I mean, it was for Ahab, but his wife is the one who actually orchestrated the whole scheme.
They find the person who filed everything, huh?
So yeah, and they sent out letters that they arranged the whole false trial that ended in Naboth's death, execution, and which was basically what made Ahab liable to die on the battlefield.
So Mammon not only means money but also property. You said-
Mammon means money. I'm talking about damim. Damim means blood, and it can also mean money.
Previously Mammon was property or
Mammon,
property.
yeah, mammon is property.
Or could be property,
Yeah,
like any kind of property for you to get money.
mammon is more money than like any kind of property. All right, Beruchim to you. Hacham Mordechai should be starting soon. We stop the recording.